So a very good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to our webinar today, looking at multi-location meetings. Just before we start, quick introduction from myself. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Kate Bacon. I'm the Customer Relations and Events Manager for IACC. And one of my roles is pulling together the schedule for these webinars. So today is one of a series of sessions we've got running throughout the year. Our next session will be on the 20th of May. With the lovely Cindy Novotny and Master Connection Associates. So do take a look at that. All our sessions are on our webinar lineup page, and I'll pop the link actually in our chat box shortly. But do take a look at the sessions we have coming up, because there's some great content in all of those. Usual housekeeping before we start. So as I mentioned just there, we do have a large number on the call today. So if I could ask you to keep your microphones on mute and your cameras off. We will record the session and forward that to you all afterwards, so that will really help with the recording. Chat boxes at the bottom of your screens for any questions for the panel. I know Mark and the panel will take questions throughout the session, so please make sure you populate the chat box with any questions. Now, with further ado, I'll hand you over to our facilitator today, IACC CEO Mark Cooper. Thanks, Mark.
Kate, thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'm delighted to join you today for this latest IACC webinar, and boy, have we got a treat in store for everybody. We have got a panel which is made up of probably the world's best authority when it comes to hybrid, virtual and multi-location meetings. So as Kate said, really hope you can use that chat box, grill us, ask some really tough questions, and we'll be thrilled to be answering those as we go through, but we'll definitely leave some time at the end as well. Like to just recognize the fact that we've got a real treat as well in regards to all of you, our audience today. We've got IACC members, venue operators from around the world. We've got meeting professionals as well that are joining us with that perspective. And it's really great when we get both sets, the buyer and the supplier in the room, to really learn together. And then we've got others within the industry that are joining us as well and really looking to embrace what can only be described as this real tsunami of interest and focus as it comes around the subject of how we're going to meet again in the future, how we're going to meet again in smaller groups, in multi-location groups. There's a real spotlight on this. So today we're not going to be looking at the basics, and we definitely have not got the elementary panelists here with us today. We've got the experts, and we're going to be taking that deeper dive into multi-location events. We're going to be kicking off today. We're going to be looking at the difference between the hybrid and the virtual. And again, not just in terms of the fundamentals of that, but kind of where the industry is going, how we're embracing this concept and adopting it into our day-to-day work. We'll look at the core elements that are needed to as well design and execute a successful event strategy. And we'll be looking at IACC's own conference program in 2021 as a great case study to how we are approaching our meetings. We'll touch on facilitation and moderation, but I use that light touch word very deliberately. We won't be going into detail in terms of those two areas, but of course, they're part of that critical triangle of expertise that we have. But we will be having a deep dive into the production side as we go through. And of course, we'll need to understand how we evaluate venues differently. If you're a planner, your priorities are different. What you're looking for is different. And from a venue operator, what you put up there up front and make sure you've got the expertise to support it is also different to 2019. And then we haven't left cost off the menu. We're going to get to that. We know that's a big area. We also know it's a big barrier for the industry in being able to deliver some of these. So we're going to tackle that head on, and we're going to come up with some suggestions around cost. But before we do that, who is this group of experts that I have with me today? And it is truly the giants of industry as it relates to hybrid. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. They have been part of a roller coaster, but they've come out the other end unscathed. I will start by just introducing myself as Mark Cooper from IACC, and my job today is simple: to be the glue that knits together all of these opinions. So with that, I'm going to now introduce Debra Mategrano from Encore. And Debra, tell us a little bit about you, and we'd like you to end by telling us, what's your favorite fast food restaurant?
Well, thank you for having me here. My name is Debra Mategrano. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Los Angeles and for Hawaii for Encore. And I have been in the industry for about 8 years. I really enjoy what I do. And if I am going to eat fast food, it's kind of like the upper scale of fast food, I guess. Panera Bread would probably be my best one.
Upper scale fast food. I love
Yes.
the way you started that off, but I've got a feeling we're going to go downhill from here. So let me next offer up the opportunity to Mr. Tim Luepke from Sodexo Conferencing. Tim.
Good morning. My name is Tim Luepke. I'm with Sodexo Conferencing. I've been in the virtual hybrid space for over a decade, managing all kinds of multifaceted meetings with technology. As far as my favorite fast food restaurant, I'd say it's a tie between Buffalo Wild Wings for the sports experience, but then I'm pulled to Chick-fil-A a lot because my kids like to eat there pretty much every day.
How did I know the sports element was going to filter through there into your dietary habits, Tim? Welcome. And next, I'd like to take us north of the border into Canada, Mr. Andrew Hodd. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for the introduction. I'm not sure if I'm feeling unscathed. I think I'm feeling pretty darn scathed these days, but I certainly appreciate the sentiment anyway. Own Vantage Venues. Vantage is very similar to a model. We know our friends at places like Convene and Etc. Venues. So we're a purpose-built conference center here in Toronto, single location, but 40,000 square feet. And I like to think of ourselves as an integrated conference center. Sort of a new word I'm playing with is just having all the technology, all the food and beverage, purpose-built design and space, and of course planning, all under one roof. So that's a little bit about us. Certainly not the brains behind the hybrid programming here at Vantage Venues, but I'm happy to be here to talk about it and have plenty of very intelligent people on the panel that can cover that part of it.
And favorite fast food restaurant, Andrew?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, with so many Americans on the call, I'll go with Chipotle. I'm a big burrito guy, so I will go with the Chipotle, although there's a place called Burrito Boys here in Toronto, which has got to be my favorite. Thank
you, sir. And next, I'd like to head south to Florida to Mr. Eric Bracht of Electro-media Design. Hi, Eric.
Hello, I'm Eric Bracht, senior consultant with Electro-media Design, managing director of our Avistar support platform. I've been with Electro-media for about a dozen years now, after almost 20 years in the events industry, working for large hotels. And I guess my favorite fast food restaurant, I'll have to be the unhealthy guy in the bunch and say Burger King.
Burger King up there. So Burger King, I have got some stats, 18,800 locations worldwide. You're never go hungry, Eric, are you? But welcome. Last but not least, Mr. Matt Harvey from Encore, coming in all the way from Wilmington, Delaware, I think, right, Matt?
Yeah, more or less, Mark. Yeah, so good morning, everybody. Matt Harvey, I'm Encore's Vice President of Virtual and Hybrid Events, which is a long-winded way of saying I get to look after Encore's digital solutions business. So all of the software and streaming platforms and all of that fun stuff that has been made much more prevalent in the last year or so is the team that I look after at Encore. You know, Mark, if I'm gonna be honest with you on the fast food thing, it's probably TGI's, but I try to avoid it as much as possible because it's not very good for my waistline. And DoorDash is making that increasingly harder. They seem to be aware of this fact and keep sending me little messages reminding me that it's a mere click away. So doing my best to resist that.
I remember my TGI Fridays as a kid, and for me it had to be Subway, because the only reason why Subway is great is you can either be in a naughty mood or a healthy mood, and they seem to have an option for both. It just depends what sort of day. Same restaurant, you can go in with either mindset. But we're really excited to have you all. Thank you so much for that. We're going to start by asking our audience today kind of where they're at in terms of their knowledge and their ability to implement hybrid and multi-location meetings. So Kate, if we can we enter into our first poll? We're going to stay on Zoom, so nice and easy on your screen there. Let's start with the, are we starting with the venues, I think? Perfect. Now we're going to start with our planner audience. So those meeting professionals, or indeed anyone who's staged a meeting before, tell us a little bit about your experience in this area. Okay, interesting. Definitely number one, staged a virtual meeting. Some interesting statistics. Can't get my words out. Statistics there. We have probably a third that have planned a hybrid meeting, and you know, not far behind that, 21% that are planning a multi-location meeting with 2 or more live locations. So I think we've got some good credentials there. I hope you agree with me, panel. Some good insights there, some good perspectives. So Kate, let's move on to the second poll if we can, and see where our venue operators are. That poll's coming on. Perfect. Thank you, Kate. So venues, your experience currently with hosting virtual, hybrid or multi-location meetings, and you can pick all that apply, because we know that you probably have had the privilege of being host for more than one. Well, first and foremost, I'm really encouraged that we've actually got some venue experience here in terms of hosting a multi-location meeting as well. And I guess there was a really famous one that was on just a few days ago, which was the Oscars, right? Taking place in a multi-location environment. It's really interesting to think about what constitutes a multi-location meeting that maybe has been around for a very long time. So we've got a good 32% received a booking for virtual, hybrid or multi-location, or received an RFP, around the same sort of weighting there as well. So again, our sales and pipelines, our interest level, our booking of venues and space around those concepts is starting to build, and certainly I'm hearing that. So thanks all for contributing to the poll there, giving us some really important perspectives. And I think now we're well on our way to settling into a couple of the key areas. So we're going to turn now to Debra and Matt from Encore to talk about the unique differences that there are as it relates to virtual, hybrid and multi-location. So Debra, Matt, over to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so in regards to hybrid events, I want to talk through this. Hybrid really is, you see a fancy definition on here, but I think we all kind of know at this point what a hybrid event is. And in its simplest terms, it's just an event that combines both in-person and virtual elements together. So for me, the most important words on this slide are not, this definition here. The most important words on this slide is hybrid events are events. So they don't need to be scary. And in fact, they can be very helpful to all of us, not just in a pandemic, but in general. Hybrid events can be incredibly important to all of us. They can expand your clients' audience reach. They can improve sponsorship opportunities, provide quick attendee data analytics, just like you saw just now on the virtual side. And then they offer so much flexibility and versatility. not being confined to just one ballroom or one venue or one city, that you're not going to have the same old event that your clients are used to doing every year. So we've been selling hybrid events for over a decade, and we know that hybrid will not be just some temporary fix to get us out of a pandemic. Hybrid events, because of all the benefits that they do provide, they're going to be a more permanent fixture in our industry for years to come. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. In a survey Encore conducted in November of 2020, we surveyed over 1,100 planners to kind of get an idea of what to expect for 2021 and beyond. And I like these graphs, especially the one on the far right, and that's where I'm going to focus, because you can kind of see why growing comfortable with hybrid events is important to all of us. So if you look here, you see that 62% of the 1,100 planners surveyed believe that hybrid is going to be playing a part in the events that they are planning through 2024. So hybrid is not a flash in the pan, and hybrid opens up and provides a lot of benefits for all of us in the moment that we're living and beyond. So we can go to the next slide. And I think this is going to go over to Matt Harvey to discuss kind of our event mix.
Debra,
Yeah, thanks,
just before we go to Matt, a really quick question I have. You talked about data and the quality of data that you can get being so much higher. And I guess we totally get that as it relates to the virtual attendee. Is it possible to get more data around a hybrid event on those that are live in the room as well because of the platforms you're using, or is that going to look the way it did?
It's a great question, Mark. And actually you can, depending on the platform, especially if you're using one that's a little bit more robust, you can get everybody on the same platform. I think a lot of times people believe there's a virtual side and there's an in-person side, and they never actually coexist. But if you use a quality platform, Encore has one called Chime, you can have everybody using that same platform on their own personal device. So they can be sitting there in the room and you can say, hey, everybody, look at your screen, and it'll populate on their phone, their iPad, whatever it may be, just as it would for everybody who is sitting at home working on their computer. And everybody can answer the same kinds of polling questions. So you see the collective whole answer for everybody involved.
So that hybrid virtual element gives us that opportunity to learn so much more about our live events
Absolutely.
than we ever had before that was even plugged in. Thank you. Matt, over to you for the event mix. Thanks, Debra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. So this is a slide that I like to show around kind of hybrid as a spectrum, if you like. And to me, this is really important because I think, you get into a lot of conversations, especially recently, where there's this preconceived idea about what hybrid means. And to me, hybrid is anything that isn't 100% in person or 100% virtual. And, that includes this sort of middle ground, sort of utopian vision that a lot of us talk about around this equitable experience of the in-person and virtual attendees. But there are plenty of examples of hybrid on either side of that. Mostly in-person meetings where the budget is mostly about the in-person piece, and maybe you're sending a passive stream to a virtual audience. Or maybe you've gone the other way. Maybe you're looking at thousands of virtual participants, and your in-person audience is really there to support the presenter, and not not in a traditional in-person audience type setting. So there's plenty of range here in terms of how you can use hybrid to achieve event goals. And they exist all the way along this line. So, and we've started to think about hybrid as an important part of an overall events program, where over the course of a year, to meet a set of goals for the association or the corporation, you might incorporate a mixture of virtual events, in-person events, and hybrid events where necessary. And those hybrid events could have this bias, or they could be that kind of 50-50 equitable experience version as well. If we move on, Kate, I just want to kind of dial in a little bit and talk about, what we are talking about that IACC has championed and that we've put a lot of work into, both Encore and Electro-media to come up with this concept of MultiPOD, which IACC is actually very well suited for as a community. And it really leans into this idea that you have more than one live audience in more than one venue, in addition to perhaps a virtual audience and remote presenters as well that don't have to be in any venue as well. So that's what we mean by multi-pod. A defining characteristic is that there's more than one live audience. And that's how we're going to spend some of the rest of the time today talking in those terms. So let's keep moving.
Matt, Debra, thank you for that. And Tim, I alluded to it earlier, the pyramid of all the successful factors that need to come together. So tell us, what's a recipe for success for a multi-pod?
I think you just need to watch the movie Shrek, right? Like onions have layers, so you got to peel them back, right? Just like ogres have. So anyways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, really, we've identified really 4 critical features when it comes to multi-pod approach. It starts out with strong technology and production delivery. Secondly, just having strong venue capabilities is really important. Thirdly, really curating that content design, because really you're only as good as keeping people engaged with content. And then lastly, the collaboration piece between all parties and locations. So to dive in a little bit more specifically to those 4 critical features, the first thing is production. So really, as we think about multi-pod, there's just a lot more facilitation between the venues and the AV production company that you have to really make sure that there's a specific place, that we can curate and really have all those parties together. And then secondly, venue is really important, and what kind of capabilities do they have? And people really want to have that sense of location, right? As a planner, people want to have they want to feel like they're in a unique location. So really partnering with IACC venues that can really give that kind of expertise is really important. And I'm going to speak to Andrew here. If you want to talk a little bit about the role that your venue has to play in the planning stage that the planner does that's different than before, sort of pre-COVID, now with the way that you collaborate with your customers and clients. Could you speak to that a little bit, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the big thing is that they have to get a lot more educated on the technology side of things. So COVID sort of provides maybe a bit of an opportunity for some of that education, given that planners aren't dealing directly with clients as much right now. But it's just really important for them to get a better understanding on the ins and outs so that we can pull it together. And really, I'm using the word again, and maybe I'll use it for, again later on, is integration. So just, it's not just about your food and beverage, it's not just about a projector, but, understanding the technology, what the needs of the client are, and then being able to pull that collaboration all together in one meeting. You're not just collaborating with the client, but in the pod environment, you're of course collaborating with another venue as well. And that venue may have a different procedures and ways of going about things. So again, organization is, never been more important. We know how important it is for meeting planners. But it's just sort of, it's really the whole job has just been, jacked up to another level, just because they need to be able to collaborate with not just your client, but internally with the AV team. That has to be stronger than ever. And then this whole other process of dealing with a pod location and for that matter, multiple pod locations. Because I think one of the keys to a successful pod is trying to create, even though they're not in the same location, but giving everyone, I think what we want to do is being able to give everybody the most consistent experience. So what food and experience that someone's getting at one location matches what it is in another city, in another country. That's what really makes it, I think, a successful pod for sure.
Andrew, what hits home from what you've just said is maybe we're using the wrong terminology. Maybe this isn't multi-location. If everything's joined together, it should be multi-room. It's just the rooms are in different cities and in different countries. But if the collaboration is there, if the liaison is there, the planning is, there's a togetherness, it's no different to a multi-room conference, is it? And we all have arranged meetings that are cross-city, city-wide, overflow accommodation into other hotels because our numbers have gone up. That hasn't felt like a second, third, or fourth conference that we're running at the same time. It's one event. So really good point.
Yeah, it demonstrates the shrinking planet that we're on, right? It just gets smaller because it's no different than, if we ran out of space, if a client's, I'm sure we've done this before, other venues have done this before, we've ran out of space, their capacity went from 100 to 200, and it's like, well, we can't move walls, we can't knock them down, but we can put people in another room and we can project everything, all the same information in the other room, and then bring you back for F&B, perhaps in another lounge space. So we were always able to do that before, and it's really not any different from what we're trying to attempt here. And it could be in another country or continent.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so really like thinking about, that collaboration and what Mark said about just being really another room, I think that's really important. So really having that production delivery with the experts in the room to make that feel like you're just in another room side by side is really important. Having that venue collaboration is really important. And then the thing that we really see is that content creation and curation is really important. And just the lead time that we've seen with MultiPODs, there's just a lot more in advance that needs to get done in order to have it on site, because every second needs to be curated in these MultiPOD locations with the facilitators and with the content. It's really important, and it really has changed the game. Whereas in the old days with just live events, you could be writing your script at 2 a.m. to go live the next morning. But with these MultiPODs, you really need to have a long runway to facilitate that and make sure that all your pieces are together. And then the last slide here is, so really it comes down to like each pod is a meeting in its own right at the same time. It's interconnected with other pods, or as Mark said, rooms, and thus really allowing for collaboration and really a unique participant feel. But it's really that single experience feel that we're really trying to drive home with this multi-pod approach, just across all locations, that you just feel like you're next door to your friends and neighbors, and you can have this collaborative environment. So on that note, I'll shift it over to, let's see who's next. I'll pass it over to.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. I'll jump in there, and I'll take the pause for a moment just to remind everyone we're going to have 2 Q&A sessions today, and we've got 2 $100, £100 or €100 contributions that we're going to give for the strongest the strongest questions that test our panel the most. And the winner of each of those will be able to donate those to the good cause of their choice, personal or professional. So please do use the chat box. After this next session, we'll dive into the first set of questions, and we'll have another set afterwards as well. And we'll use the chat box in a couple of other ways. So Tim, Andrew, thank you. Really appreciate that part. Well, robust options for an uncertain world. Our own conferences, IAC Americas Connect and IAC Americas Knowledge Festival. For those of you who are close to IAC, you know that we went from 100% live to 100% virtual last May, quadrupled our attendance, and this year we have landed in that determined state of running MultiPOD in July in the Americas, and also running MultiPOD in Europe in October. And boy, what a learning curve and a learning process that it is. But we live in a VUCA world at the moment. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. And we're supposed to try to organize a conference or an association against all of these headwinds. I'm not sure how possible it is. The rates of change. What's going to happen in terms of being able to bring people together live in Texas or in Toronto in what is in effect 10 or 12 weeks time? It's changing so quickly. We've got to be nimble. Somebody said to me yesterday on a webinar, which I thought was a great point, if you go multi-pod, if you have the hybrid element, as opposed to putting all your eggs in one basket and going just 100% live, you can work with that high rate of change. We're unclear about how our attendees, when they come back, will feel. And hopefully after the first meeting, conference or training course that they do, we'll have a much better idea, and that ambiguity or that uncertainty will go away. It's complex, different relationships. Some of them are deeper. They'll need to be deeper. We're coming back together off Zoom for the first time, and we need to encourage that. Again, if we think of multi-location or multi-room, as we're now coining the phrase, smaller groups, much more of a chance to collide more than once than you would have at a bigger conference, and therefore build deeper relationships. So actually, we see it as a real opportunity, an important one, to get 50 people in a room together in Chicago, instead of having 250 people in a room together this year, or you might just meet somebody for a split second. Deeper relationships. But we've got to be careful that there's no ambiguity in there as well. We've got to avoid lack of clarity. We've got to talk about why we're doing it. And as well for IACC, of course, with our own events, we're both doing it because it's the right way to get all of our members together around the world, around the Americas, certainly in July, but also it's a right thing to do to send a message that we're pioneers in our industry. If we can't come back live or use these types of technologies and platforms and these omni-channels, then how can we expect our customers to do it? And how can we guide our customers through doing this? And going back to that poll, it was really important to see that there's a high number of meeting professionals and venues that are now dealing with this. So really important part of it. It has, as we looked at our conference, there was, we made decisions like there's no mothership. There's 5 locations, one of them are virtual, but they all had equal weighting. They had opportunities for us to be more sustainable by reducing the travel for our speakers and for our staff. Think about it, and we thought about this very carefully when we saw that we quadrupled our numbers as it related to going 100% virtual last year. We captured attendees and generations that we would not have seen live. And that's the exciting point. Remember, the last time we went to a conference and someone put their hand up and asked a really smart question because they were a first-time attendee, they weren't tainted by the past, they were incoming generation. Well, MultiPOD makes the event more accessible, we feel, for our event, more affordable, and we want to see more of those incoming generations coming in. There's so much more that we've learned as well. We changed the priorities. Our production and our content planning with the Encore team happened much sooner in the process, and it influenced then which keynotes and what messages they were going to bring, how they were going to be visually presented for our virtual world as well as for our live attendees. It's a really fun ride. It's really important. We saw the changes very vividly, and we're excited and hope that all of you will be joining either the Knowledge Festival in Europe later this year or indeed IACC Americas Connect. But now I'm going to hand over to the first, before we run into our wonderful sheep there in the Lake District in the UK, I'm going to take it and open the chat box. Kate, have we got any questions that's come in? Are we about to give that first €50 community donation away?
Yeah, we do have a great question actually coming from my owner, asking about how best we extend the hospitality experience of a venue to an online participant.
Okay. Who'd like to take a look at that on our panel?
Mark, maybe I'll start, and I know there's plenty of other good expertise on the phone too. But just thinking about it from a technology perspective, one of the things that brings people together is shared experience, right? So doing things at the same time. And being able to participate as part of a bigger group. So, some of the things that, we talk about in that context is, how can you involve people as part of a general session where, a virtual audience and an in-person audience are involved in the same thing, are contributing to the same word cloud or the same heat map source or some other data gathering exercise where everybody is doing the same thing at the same time. I think we also mentioned earlier from a catering perspective, you can obviously between live pods, you can coordinate F&B, but what a great way to extend that online by delivering an F&B solution to your online participants as well, and kind of have them participate in that similar experience too. So a couple of ideas. I'm sure there are lots of others.
Yeah, really good points. Thank you, Matt. Tim, I don't know, I see you come off mute there to add a third.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say authenticity. I mean, is a big word these days. I think just sharing like what the staff is doing behind the scenes, really showing how you're putting the presentation together, or the staff is coming together behind the scenes, and sharing those moments, I think just bring an element of realness that people want to have, similar to what Matt said about human connection. So just in everything you push out, from content to collaboration, I think just has to have that level of realness and humanness to it is really important.
Yeah, they're all really good points. And the alternative point I'll put over, it's a great question, Iona, is that actually think about doing something that's exclusive to your virtual attendee. Everybody thinks the virtual attendee is having the second-rate experience because they're not there. But when you break for lunch, when you break, to do something with your live groups, you've got an exclusive audience that are your virtual attendees. You can do something that only they get, or send them something that only they get, and then have a point of being able to bring that up and draw some parallels as well. So it's about making everyone feel special, but you could do that in slightly different ways. Another question.
Oh, I had one more thing that I wanted to add to that, actually.
Please do.
In regards to the experience, you need to be thinking about the environment for both of your groups, the people who are on site and then also on that virtual side. And I think oftentimes for a hybrid, people just assume you can throw a camera up and it's going to capture whatever is needed and the virtual team will be fine. And that's not really the case. You need to keep that in mind, and it needs to feel like an opening general session to everyone. So you need that camera angle and that lighting and everything key. So when the stage opens, when people walk on there, they feel like I'm a part of this. I'm seeing exactly what they're seeing in person. I'm just sitting at home as well.
Well, they're all awesome points and really valuable. Whether you're a planner or a venue, there's some great tips there. I'm going to go back to one tip over that one question that's come up as well from Julius. I don't want to skip these questions because they're really valuable. But what Julius is asking is, from the data collection standpoint, is it possible to silo data and information as it relates to industry, maybe exhibitors that are on the platforms and live, the attendees, and maybe even those that are involved in the organization and those that are attending? Is it possible to segment data by attendee type?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And the key thing to be concerned about, or to get right, if you like, is to make sure that you're capturing the right dimensions in the first place. I'm sure everyone knows their favorite Excel genius who can kind of manipulate data to their heart's content after the fact. But it's really important that the platform that you're working with captures the right things up front, and then you can export from more or less every platform and kind of do whatever you want if the in-platform reporting solution doesn't give you exactly the right look. There's always ways to kind of create that for yourself, as long as you've captured it on the front end. So, for us, that's thinking through at registration, what type of cohort groups do I have in my attendees, and do I want to understand who's coming in that's a supplier versus a buyer, and is that going to be an important dimension when I look at the data later? And some of Julius's points around I want to understand how my sponsor interacted with the platform and how much value they got out of it, and those kinds of things. So yeah, it's all there as long as it's captured up front.
Really good point as well, Julius, because sponsors is the one area that we're wrestling around. What does this mean for sponsors? They can't be in 2 places, they can't be in 4 places. But again, remember when we were only in 1 place before, and you'd speak to that sponsor and they say, oh no, we can't attend, you're on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast, we don't have anyone there. Well, now, there's far more opportunity to engage more sponsors because you're over a greater geographical spread, and now you've got the data as well. So actually, and we're experiencing it with our own event with IACC, there are less opportunities to not be appropriate to a sponsor in a multi-location environment. Well, definitely I'm going to award that community prize in the first leg to Iona. You really got the panel thinking there and lots of good ideas, so thank you for that. Pop in the chat box which charity or which good cause you'd like us to give that. I think in your case, that'll be €100. So congratulations. And we'll do this again at the end of the session and donate another 100 as part of IACC's Better Tomorrow practice. On the facilitation side, I'm just going to make 2 points. One which has come up quite a lot in the discussions I've had, which is if you've got multiple locations, do you need multiple facilitators or MCs? And the approach we've taken under good authority is to have a master facilitator, but then have local or regional pod facilitators as well. And they don't need to be highly costed out speakers. They can actually be from within, if you're an association, your membership group, peers doing regional facilitation. But it's important to have facilitators that are encouraging that collaboration as well from pod to pod, and somebody who's overarching to manage that. And we're very fortunate to work with Mike van der Vieve from My Meeting, who's going to be our master facilitator, and he's actually going to train the 5 pod volunteer facilitators 2 months prior to the conference, so they come away with some great personal development as well. So now we're going to move into an area where Matt and Debra are going to talk about the 6 drivers that they see in terms of the event team. I know production's a really important part. So Matt, Debra, looking forward to you walking us through this next part.
Yeah, thank you so much. And honestly, a lot of the questions that we're seeing come up in the chat, this is going to cover some of those as well. So this is great. The 6 key drivers of hybrid event success, you know, because of our in-depth experience with hybrid, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but Encore, it feels really new to so many of us. I know it felt new to me, even though I'm on event technology side of things. We've been doing hybrid events for over a decade. It was just much smaller, wasn't used like it is today. So it feels new, but it's been around for quite a while. So because of our history with that, we identified 6 key drivers to kind of help you plan a successful hybrid event. Those key drivers are right on here. You know, it's environment, experience, engagement, connectivity, content, and then obviously production. So we're going to go over them real high level just here right now. I have this kind of set up more in a checklist form because I think a lot of times we just don't know where to begin when somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm looking to book a hybrid event. You know, where do you start? So the first thing really is to be asking the right kinds of questions. And if you think about those key drivers, there's certain questions that go underneath each one of them. So we'll start with environment here. You should really be asking immediately about the guidelines of the city or the venue or venues if you're doing multi-pod for your client. What are they looking at? What are the guidelines? I know it's very different for all of us on this call where we're sitting at this point. How many people will be attending, you know, and how many people will be attending in person? How many people will be attending virtually? That's a question that you should get right off the bat. How many presenters will they have? And will those presenters be virtual? Will they be in person or a mixture of both? Here, I like to stress the absolute importance of lighting. If presenters are presenting in a room out virtually, you need to let your client know just that a camera needs 5 times the amount of light that the human eye needs in order to translate what it sees correctly. So in knowing this, if you want to have that great experience that people are having in that room translate to your virtual audience, make sure they are absolutely well lit. So those are a few things that you should be thinking about in regards to environment. When we look at experience, talk through the room design. A lot of times people just do not know exactly what they're looking for or what they should be looking for. Things like where your camera or your video feeds are going to be set. People are going to be socially distanced. Maybe you're used to having 300 people in one room, but when you socially distance them, is the AV currently in there going to work for you? Do you need more screens? Do you need video feeds for people sitting in the back? Hybrid is a balance. You want a nice straight angle for that camera that's capturing the feed for your virtual attendees, but you also want to ensure that you're not messing with the sight line of your in-person audience. So you don't want people kind of bobbing and waving all over the place to look around the camera that's capturing for the virtual attendees. Can the meeting space accommodate the group seating, the group how it's seated, socially distanced? That's something that you need to think about. What about the multiple rooms? Do you need to have more than one space that you're used to? And then something else that I like to talk about in regards to experience is pre-recording. It is a luxury that we absolutely recommend. You should ask them, are they looking to pre-record parts of this event? We can move to the next slide, which I think you already did, and go back one. In regards to engagement, would they like to see polling and voting during their meeting? Have they found an event platform that works for their needs? I like this question because depending on your event, sometimes Zoom works. Other times you're going to need a robust platform like Chime or something like that. How would you like your participants to interact during your event? You know, is there going to be chat options? Will you have an open Q&A? Do you want to see data analytics? You know, who attended, for how long, what sessions did they attend, what did they click on? If those things are important to your client, you need to make sure that you're using a little bit more of a robust platform. Connectivity, this is something that we can't stress enough, really. A stable, robust network is absolutely crucial to the success of your hybrid event. So it's good to know your backup plan. It's good to know the bandwidth requirements for both your in-person and remote presenters. You're going to want to make sure to ask, is everybody that's going to be on site, are they expected to be getting online? Will you be streaming your event live, or will this be an on-demand situation? Those are all going to play a part in the connectivity and what is needed for your hybrid event. Content, there is so much that you can say about content, but when I think about the questions that you should be asking with regards to a hybrid event, I think about asking things like, will you require assistance in creating the content of your event? Will your presenters be pre-recording? And will your speakers be required to be, will your speakers offsite require speaker-ready training? So those are kind of things that you want to ask there. And then we get into production. So it's important to remember that with hybrid, you do have two teams working to execute your one hybrid event. So the way that I like to kind of express this is that you have your boots on the ground, that traditional in-person team that we're all used to seeing. And then you have your eyes in the sky, and that's your virtual team. And speaking from experience, you know, presenting virtually is stressful. It's really stressful when you have to be your own technical team, your own graphics operator, your own show caller. So you're gonna want that eyes in the sky team. So ask your client about that technical support. Do they currently have a virtual platform service provider that they have that they like? If not, you know, let's start talking through that. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. I'll pass it on to my colleague, Matt. He'll be able to discuss the importance of building that production team for both your on-site purposes and your virtual.
Yeah, and we'll, oh, you can skip ahead, Kate. We're looking for the one more. See if I can go a bit quicker and you can build this out. I think it's, oh, sorry. Wow, we're all over the place. Go back one. There we go.
That is my fault, Matt. Just testing.
we'll spin through this a bit quicker. I know we're kind of a little bit short on time here, but we've talked a lot. You know, Andrew mentioned earlier on this sort of, and Mark both mentioned coordination. Deb's talked about the value of productions, but you know, this is sort of an easy way of thinking about it all together, and sort of things that you might need that you might not have considered either as a venue delivering services or as a planner, you know, looking to put on a hybrid event. So there's some show management stuff, mostly in the form of a moderator. That's the sort of key role that Mark mentioned earlier. And then the pod leader, that's a less sophisticated role. It's really more about getting people to sit down all at the same time. You know, it's hard enough to get one room of people to sit down on time. Like now, imagine you have to do that five or six times in different cities, because there's no starting late for one pod, right? It's sort of when it starts is when it starts. And then production is an interesting topic, especially with IACC, because IACC does such a good job with its in-house technology programs. There is an awful lot to be gained from doing multi-pod meetings with IACC venues that already have a lot of this technology built in. And you know, the advice here is that's great individually, but make sure that there's that there is a level of oversight, a level of technology, a production coordinator that sits over and above all of those venues, so that they can traffic cop and make sure that all of those venues are coordinating together. Makes a real difference. And then we will just switch gears a little bit and talk about platform support. So, you know, these platforms, ours is called Chime, there are others out there, but so one of the key differences between different types of platforms is how much help you get from the platform provider. And I'm sure we have, you know, plenty of experience on the call around basic platforms where you pay normally a fixed subscription per month and you can use as much of it as you want. Best example in the last year is probably Hopin. And you know, this is a platform designed to be self-supported, and if you want their help, it's chat, it's text, it's here's the link to the FAQ that helps you understand how to do the thing, and that's kind of it. And then you kind of progress through different levels of service which come from different platform providers. So you know, there is an enhanced level of support where you're going to get a project manager assigned to you. Maybe they're going to do the graphics for you, maybe they're managing your content. Maybe there's an enhanced level of support for your attendees on the day. And then there's another step up into virtual platform production, which we call, you know, which you see there in the third column, which is some of the things Deb was talking about around show calling and virtual technical managers and breakout managers. And these are the guys that can really take the pressure off a meeting planner and be able to, you know, allow a meeting planner to go back to, you know, overall coordination, flight, you know, flight control of the entire event, and leave the technical detail to the experts. And then of course, you know, right the way to the end, hybrid production. This is the back to the in-room pieces that you need. Deb mentioned that lots of these venues have great infrastructure. Sometimes that's not going to be enough based on the exact nuances of the event, and it's important to be able to recognize that early, and be able to, you know, catch it and be able to supplement, which is really what Encore is all about.
Debra, that's great. Thank you so much for taking us through. The production area is so critical. What I'm going to do now is I think we've covered the digital event strategy, which was one of the next ones, because we've talked about that all the way through, but I am going to try and pick up from where Deb left off in regards to what to look for in lighting, and really hone in now with Eric's help and Andrew's perspective of what does that all mean when you're evaluating a meeting space, and what should we be looking out for?
Yeah, I'll go first, Eric, if you don't mind. First of all, Debra did a great job talking about some of the good questions to ask, you know, when you're trying to source a venue, and just sussing out, you know, how strong a partner that the venue can be. As you mentioned, you know, we've been doing this for well over a decade, and most of us were. So it really wasn't a new thing to dive into hybrid. It was just sort of, you know, we were certainly the process was sped up quite a bit and having to really dive in, and it was kind of almost all going to be hybrid. So there's lots and lots of learnings now. Everybody's still learning from one another. One of the things that we did, and I think if you haven't done this already, any venue, is to put in a permanent broadcast studio, be able to have it already set up and already ready to go. I think we're going to move along that. We talked about that hybrid mix, and what a broadcast studio can be is really close to that virtual side of the hybrid mix. So where you'd have your staging, your lighting, you can put a panel up on that stage and just have a really well-produced event. But as we move along that mix, we start to have more people come back into the room. We start to maybe break down that structure a little bit. To emphasize how important the lighting is, we actually covered up our best view and put up a green screen just because it's so much more superior as far as the in-house lighting goes. And I know Eric's going to dive into more of the details, but I just wanted to demonstrate how crucial it is. And I'd love to hear some tips from Eric about how, as we move along that mix and get people back in the room, how we provide the natural light for the tenants while still being able to produce that great event experience for those that are left virtually.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And we can all learn from your experience. So I appreciate that. And Eric, take us on a guide, build out on some of those great points Andrew's made there.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We've touched on a lot of this before. We're going to try to get just a little bit more in depth on some things. One of the big things that we touched on was bandwidth and connectivity, and the fact that this does take some bandwidth to do. We want to make sure that whatever we're using from a production standpoint of the stream is isolated and separate, and it's dedicated bandwidth, as opposed to just being, okay, here's your bandwidth and that's what you use for the meeting. Because a lot of us, either on the venue side or meeting planners, may have had the experience of doing all our testing on a Sunday afternoon before the meeting starts, and everything goes great. And then Monday morning, all the attendees show up and all the employees show up and start logging on with their laptops and their computers and their cell phones and their tablets. And all of a sudden, that screaming bandwidth that we had on Sunday disappears, and we start to have some issues. So we want to make sure that the bandwidth is dedicated. I took a snapshot of the from my office the other day. If you go back to that previous slide, we want to make sure that we have both upload and download speed. If you look there, you'll see that I've got, in my office, I've got screaming download speed, but my upload speed is about 10 times less. And that's really not what we're looking for from a standpoint of being able to produce a good hybrid event. You really want both of those numbers to be up in a range that can support whatever the needs of your meetings are. And there's a good bandwidth calculator on the IACC site, I think, that Encore provided that does a good job in letting you know what that is. We also encourage wired connections for your production site. You don't want to have to try to do that on a wireless network. One of the things Debra also touched on was how critically important lighting is in the room to your video. The human eye can kind of even out everything, but if you don't have good lighting in the room, whether that's production lighting that's brought in or in a smaller event, just the regular lighting that's in the room, you really do suffer from a video standpoint. If you look at that picture, it's the same picture. The left side is what it looks like when the lighting isn't proper, and that's what the camera has to do. The camera has to crank up its gain, and it really has to stress in order to try to get a good picture. And all that stress also means more bandwidth. So you really want to have good lighting in the room. That means both the lighting that's in the room and controlling the ambient light. You want to make sure that all your windows are covered with some type of control, because one of the things that if all of a sudden it gets cloudy, if that changes the light and the look, that's going to refocus all the cameras. They're going to try to white balance again, and you're going to have issues.
Great, thank you, Eric. Some great tips there. I know there's a lot more as well that you can and should be sharing as part of what EMD does and the services you provide. I'm now going to, as we're coming up to the hour, I would like to make sure we don't miss out on cost, because that's an area I know that is really important. So if we're going to end on cost, we'll take just a couple of minutes in there, and then we'll go to the last section of the Q&A. And hope you guys can all hang in with us. Yeah, I'd like to hand over to Matt and Debra on cost.
Yeah, I think cost is something that can be very tricky with regards to how people view how they've traditionally planned an event. Hey, this is one event. This is great. I know exactly what I'm doing. And now it feels like you're kind of doing two. And so I do go back to the benefits of hybrid that we were discussing before. And one of those things is sponsorship opportunities. And Mark had mentioned earlier about, oh, how do you get more sponsorship and people can't be in two places at one time? You need to be able to block time for both your in-person and your virtual attendees to attend something like a virtual exhibit hall. Those do exist. There are platforms that can do it. Chime is a great one that you can do that with. And it's a way that you provide a certain time that everybody is going to say, hey, I'm dedicating this time to go into this actual hall. Your sponsors will get a lot of activity and they get the data analytics to say, hey, I was able to speak to, there's no estimate. When you were in a hall, you could say, oh, well, there were 150 people there, but I don't know how many people stopped by. I remember speaking to 10. Here you can say, I had appointments with all of these people. So it's a lot more tracking capabilities there. That is something that you can bill separately. Your sponsors can be paying for that and it offsets those costs for you. In addition, when you have a lot of people coming into an event and they're traveling and you're paying for their room and board or whatever it may be, when you have that hybrid element and you have less people coming into on site, that also helps with the cost. It alleviates a little bit of that for you as well. So it can balance out when you feel like you're producing two events that are actually one. Matt, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to add to that or not.
No, I think you covered it, Deb. We should move on. Make sure we give Mark some time back.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Matt. All great points. And Eric, this graph here tells an important story. Cost of equipment and hardware is coming down, reliability and ease of use is going up. So it's got to be good news for us embracing these new technologies, right? If we're a venue operator or indeed a meeting professional procuring from the venues.
Yeah, there really is, kind of a shift going on in the marketplace. What used to be an empty room that got a bunch of equipment brought into it is now a room that can have some infrastructure already in place. Now, of course, we're not talking about the large ballroom events, but for some of the smaller events, a lot of these rooms, especially at the conference center facilities, already have good display built in. They already have good audio built in. They already have these things, which are actually easier to use for either the venue staff or the people coming in, because we've all got these TVs in our home on our walls already. We've all got a lot of this that we've grown used to. Cost comes down, ease of use goes up, makes it better for everyone involved.
Eric, that's great. I'm going to head into the Q&A, and it's fantastic to let our panel know everyone's really hanging in there. So we've got our audience sticking with us. So I'm going to continue because there's some great insights here. Sean Anderson asks, looking at the build out and the timelines to prep and produce hybrid, and it looks to be different from live and live stream. I guess the answer to that is yes, it understand it's a very different shift in terms of the amount of time that you allocate to planning in all of the key areas that are existing and new. I also have another question that I'd like to just raise, only because it completely passes me over. Julius is asking, has anyone used a flogger to moderate the event as well? To have some extra dimension for the online participants. Can anyone, first of all, explain to me what a flogger is, and then also as it relates to moderation, would love to get your perspective for Julius. Oh, Debra, you're just on mute.
I actually had the same question. I was not aware of what a flogger was. I was like, is that a different name for an MC? Because I'm a huge advocate of the MC in a hybrid situation. It definitely helps to it bridges the gap between both audiences. But if we can clarify.
Well, either that or we can give Julie a surprise for completely flummoxing the panel, which I had no idea that was going to happen today, but we will definitely look it up. I really do want to take the opportunity now to close out and thank each and every one of you, Deb, Matt, Andrew, Eric, Tim. Really do appreciate, how much you've shared with us today. It's been great insights, and of those that are asking the question, we absolutely will share the slides with you, and I'll talk with Debra about those timetables around, those checklists as well, if we can share any material there, because I know that both EMD and Encore and IACC have got lots of material around MultiPOD, including the venue pledge, including the meeting professional guide on the IACC website for MultiPOD as well. But for now, I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of this IACC event. Hope you can join us for the next one that is happening on May the 20th with the wonderful Master Connection Associates, and go out there and get those multi-location events in your diaries, confirmed, committed, and start planning, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.